Holy City Center Radio, it is episode 265, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Monday, June 16th, 2024. Hello, everyone. I hope you had an awesome weekend, and for those of you celebrating, I hope Father's Day went well. Big thank you, and I love you to some of the best dads I know. My own father, of course, and my brother. I hope they had fantastic Father's Days. I will say that they probably did because they're both doing something fun. My parents are out in their RV, little, kind of couple-day getaway. They didn't travel super far, but they're out there with their dog Tess and their brand new puppy Piper. That's right. They've got another dog. I can't wait to meet the new pup. Sounds like things are going great. Both dogs are getting along, and thankfully the puppy, although she has her moments, is a very chill dog, apparently, according to them and my brother. His family, they just say it's just a perfect dog for their older dog. They're just both kind of chill and, not too mischievous. So there's been a few moments, of course, when the puppy's going to be a little naughty, but that's okay. So my dad and mom are, traveling together with the dog. So that sounds great. And my brother and his family are in freaking Disney World right now. So I know his Father's Day must be going pretty darn well. Well, when you hear this, of course, it's Monday, so Father's Day will have passed, but it sounds like they were having fun when I was talking to all of them through text about their travels. I'm totally not jealous at all, especially not of my brother and his family. I went to Disney with them last year. We had so much fun. Just being there with my niece and nephew was really the highlight, just seeing how excited they were, experiencing it for the first time, and I hadn't been in years and years and years. So, yeah, I mean, it can be fun as an adult, especially when, again, when you're going with your niece and nephew and they're of that age where they're like fully invested and enjoying it. Sometimes kids are too young and they're probably like crying the whole time they're there, and it's no fun for the parents, but we had a blast. So certainly jealous of their travels, but so happy that they were able to go again and the kids can make some more memories there. What a fun time, being that age and being able to make those memories at Disney. So very happy that they are currently there and they'll have all sorts of fun. As for me, pretty quiet weekend, not a whole lot going on. Just been doing some work. I had a little bit of a lazy Saturday. It was like, I can postpone some of this work a little bit and just watch some TV and chilled out a little bit. So I hope your weekend was just as relaxing, or at least if it was busy, it was a lot of fun. But without any further delay, let's get into the latest news. It's been a while since we talked about the Charleston County School District. Of course, part of that is the school year was winding down. It was quite hectic at the beginning of the year, as I'm sure many of you remember. Lots of drama, lots of issues. School board made so many mistakes. Just seemed like they didn't know how to do anything properly, and we've discussed that at length before. So after a little bit of a quiet period, we've got some more drama. And we're not quite sure how it's going to play out yet. So it's been less than a year since a Charleston County School District employee filed a complaint that ultimately led to an investigation and then the actual exit of its former superintendent. And that poor superintendent had only been in that role for a couple of months. And you may remember all the drama surrounding that, where the board voted him in after names of finalists had leaked, causing some to drop out. And then almost immediately, a faction of the school board just seemed to be going after the superintendent because they didn't really want him in the first place. So this complaint was their main way to push him out. They did. They ended up spending a lot of money on his severance package, as well as several other boondoggles of theirs. And now it looks like they're going to be spending another $3 million because, as I said, less than a year after that complaint, a brand new one has been made against the replacement superintendent. However, Live 5 News, where I first saw this story, says there are some notable differences surrounding the circumstances in which the complaints were filed that will likely, in their words, spare current superintendent Anita Huggins from being fired or even placed on administrative leave, which is what happened in the first case. So what exactly here is going on? So Last week, the Charleston County School Board of Trustees received a letter from a man named John Cobb. He is the executive director of federal programs for the county schools. His main responsibilities have to do with approving expenses for programs that use any sort of federal funds, specifically funds from the American Rescue Plan Emergency Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. That is a mouthful, but basically, you may remember during the pandemic, there were some funds that were allocated for all sorts of things, but there's this one in particular for schools to try to help them rebound from the pandemic. Things that were approved had to be for very specific things. You know, there was some stuff that they weren't allowed to use these funds for. So, in a letter dated June 9th, Cobb says that Huggins and the Chief Human Resources Officer, Bill Brigman, created a hostile working environment. Cobb claims that Huggins retaliated against him after he raised concerns about some of those funds that Huggins had approved. He said he was pressured to approve proposals for which he had no prior authorization, so he raised some concerns about that. Specifically, he mentioned one instance when he said he pushed for some documentation before signing off on hiring an employee. He said that Huggins then gave that task to another employee and instructed them to just forge Cobb's signature. That is a huge problem. Obviously, forging signatures is a big problem if it turns out to be true. In another instance, he said he was pressured to approve $800,000 in those funds to construct an artificial turf field at North Charleston High School, something that Cobb said he did not believe was covered under those funds. So that's an instance of, you know, he's supposed to be watching these funds, making sure they're going to the appropriate things that they were, you know, put aside for. And he was like, I don't know if an artificial turf field at a football stadium is, or it might not be a football stadium, but it's just artificial turf field for some sort of use in athletics at North Charleston High School might not be an appropriate use of those funds. So he said that the fraud allegations against district staff even extend as far back as to when Don Kennedy was the superintendent. So we're talking about a few years now. He says Kennedy pressured him to fast track the funding for something called the Charity Foundation. Now, because of the cost of the Charity Foundation's proposal, Cobb said it should have gone through the competitive bidding process. You may be familiar with that. Certain entities have to have a bidding process if they have large-scale projects, and he believed that this was one of them. He says that when he pushed back, he was met with some what he perceived as isolation and marginalization, leaving him with a feeling of constant fear of being demoted, forced to retire, or fired. Now, ahead of the next school year, Cobb's position was eliminated, but he was transferred to another position with the title of executive principal. Scott says no reason was given for the position change, and he viewed it as a demotion. However, district staff said the new position is the same level and salary as his current one. Now, one of the differences here is the letter to the board comes almost a month after the district had already launched an independent investigation by an outside firm into issues with processing those funds. Now, those issues were first discovered when vendors reported that they were not receiving payment for their services. So the fact that this was already triggered, this may be one of the reasons that Live 5 News was saying this is a little bit different than the last time around. Anita Huggins may not be put on leave, let alone, terminated or face any other sort of discipline in that manner. So that's where we stand at. The full results of that investigation have not yet been released, but officials have said fixing the problems will cost the district more than $3 million. So regardless of what this whole investigation finds, and if it does find that there was problems, it just seems that the school board in hiring people is not doing a very good job. And also whether you can really place this at the board or not, it's just another example where they're having to spend all this money and it's continued fallout from this COVID era of funds and things not being done appropriately. And again, it may not be the board's direct fault, although these accusations are against the superintendent that they voted in. and how this would be the second superintendent in a row. Well, I guess technically three, since this person has said some of the problems started with Kennedy. It's just what a mess. This school has wasted so much money. Not the school, I'm sorry, the school board, the school district has wasted so much money on investigations and fixing some of their own problems and some of the district that may not be directed to them, but obviously adds into that total. Just a complete mess, and it makes you wonder, like, how long these types of issues are going to continue. This is an interesting story that I haven't had a chance to talk about. It came out, I think, a couple weeks ago now, maybe almost three. But representatives for a newspaper that's based in England were visiting the Lowcountry and some other places around the globe where the paper played a role in the enslavement of Africans. And they're basically, the newspaper found that their founder had ties to the slave trade, human trafficking, and had built up his wealth, and that was part of the paper's creation. And the paper we're talking about is The Guardian. It's a well-known paper based in Manchester, England. Back in 2023, they admitted that their founder played a role in the transatlantic slave trade, as I mentioned. So there's been other entities, including the city of Charleston, for instance, who have apologized for their role in slavery, and obviously it was more of like an official, the city, we're apologizing on behalf of something this city did before any of us were here. So it's not like they were saying, like, I myself are apologizing. It was just like, hey, this shouldn't have happened. I represent the city now, and we believe this is well overdue. And we're just going to say, on behalf of the people who work for the city now, we find it atrocious that people before us were involved in this way. And there's been some other companies who have done similar things. And it's one thing to apologize, of course, especially, because none of the people around today were directly involved, although maybe some people, generational wealth and things, they've benefited from that past, but it's not their fault for something their forefathers had done. So some entities have kind of just left it at that. Others have looked into reparations or doing something more, if not something like that. And so they established an advisory committee that obviously is affiliated with the paper, and they are now working with historians and locations where slavery was institutionalized. Just kind of want to learn more and see how can they sort of do something besides just issuing an apology. Their paper was created by someone who benefited from the transatlantic slave trade. So how can they give back? How can they try to make things a little better? And so members from England spent time recently visiting historical sites here in Charleston to learn how slavery impacted the lives of Black people on Sea Islands and other communities. The organization says they want to provide what it calls restorative justice in a way that they can provide support, funding, and whatever other ways can be created to potentially atone for what happened through their founders. So again, they're just trying to say, hey, we know that our business grew out of something horrible. We're sorry that is what happened, even though we had nothing to do with it. But we do want to try to make right in some way. Obviously, you can never make right for what happened. But what can they do today to show that this paper isn't, that obviously they've made strides, it's grown, and the people who are currently behind it don't hold those same horrific values or beliefs that their founder may have. So it's a 10-year program, and it's designed to have a positive future impact in African American and Gullah Geechee communities that grew out of this dark past. Nothing official has been announced, but just thought it was an interesting story. Number one, that this is one of the few instances of a business or an entity actually like trying to take steps instead of just apologizing or, virtue signaling or whatever. They're actually trying to do something positive. And obviously they were here in Charleston, so it made this story even more relevant, and that's why I wanted to share it. If I see any updates about what they plan to do and things like that, I'll certainly pass it along. The trouble for Boeing continues. At least this time, they caught a problem before it was too late. Boeing, back on June 13th, disclosed another production problem with the 787 that it builds in North Charleston. They said hundreds of fasteners were installed improperly on wide-body jets that have not yet been delivered. So that's the good news. None of these planes that have these faulty fasteners are out there. They're not being used. They weren't even delivered, let alone be put into use yet. So yes, the issue involves incorrect tightening of more than 900 fasteners per aircraft, which are split equally on both sides of the mid-body section of the plane. Boeing said it has informed the Federal Aviation Administration of the problem, which was first reported by Reuters, the news outlet. So it's not clear how many Dreamliners are affected, but Boeing said deliveries have not been paused, and the company is investigating whether the problem will have any impact on future deliveries. The problem obviously must be fixed, and the FAA must give its go-ahead before each 787 can be delivered. So again, not good that there's another problem with these planes. But the good news is they caught it and self-reported, which they were not so good about doing in the past. So in that sense, it's good. And from a business perspective, hopefully they are able to still meet their deliveries so, that they can continue to operate and hopefully get better at what they're doing. Again, certainly troublesome that they continue to have issues, but at least this time around, they actually seem to have gone through the appropriate channels and processes that are in place when something like this happens. And lastly, a quick update from the last podcast regarding local elections. I had mentioned on Friday's episode that there was going to be a recount for the South Carolina District 41 seat in the state Senate. And the incumbent Sandy Senn actually conceded the race to Matt Lieber before the recount actually started. Senn didn't realize that she could waive the automatic recount when someone in a race here in South Carolina wins by 1% or less of the total vote, so if their lead is 1% or less, it automatically triggers a recount. But the person who had the least amount of votes has the right to waive that. I didn't know that was an option either. But when she found out, she decided to concede, saying that she trusted the process and the computers and all that. So that means the far right, they're both Republicans, but Lieber was far right in comparison to Senator Senn. He goes on to face the Democrat Rita Atkins in November in the primary. And that'll do it for this edition of Holy City Center Radio. I hope you enjoy listening. If you like the show, please rate and review it, subscribe, whatever you can do on the platform you're listening on. I really appreciate it. I also want to thank Lindsay Marie Collins with LMC Sound System for producing this and every episode of Holy City Center Radio, and Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every show. I hope your week is off to a great start and you have an amazing rest of the week ahead of you, but I will talk to you in just a couple days. I'll see you on Wednesday. Until then, good night. Good luck.